Everyone.
Good morning.
Happy Sunday.
Happy fourth Sunday in Advent.
Yeah.
I'm actually sad today. I told Cozy I always feel sad the fourth Sunday in Advent because it really is my favorite season of the year.
Oh.
And I'm like, it's the last Sunday. And she was like, Mom, it's okay. The fun stuff is about to happen.
So we haven't been having fun?
I was like, oh, okay. I guess that helps.
Oh man, we have
eight
people watching.
Amazing. This was actually okay. So you guys may see that it's just me and Matt today. We didn't have any volunteers come on today. In fact, Lyle Pratt is in the background doing tech this morning. So thanks to him, I almost threw him in the stream as a joke, but his video's off, so it doesn't matter. But say hello in the comments so we can see who's watching. Hi, Tammy, Jeff, and Jet. So good to see people. So this was actually our test. We wanted to see if people actually watched who weren't in the service.
12 is a really good
turnout for
a virtual
great
service.
Good morning, Anna. So we are going to keep this really, really short today. Really short and sweet. Some of you are not on and you're watching the World Cup, and some of you are maybe like taking a little quick World Cup break. Maybe we caught the World Cup during the break, during the half. There's David, Tori,
or they
James,
have the World Cup
Becca.
going on in the background. And
yeah. Someone let me know the score. What's going on in the World Cup? I forgot to look it up. Okay, so hi, Miles. Good to see everyone. We have a few announcements, and then oh, I forgot to tell Lyle. Lyle, if you hover over the comments, you can highlight them like this.
And click show.
Here's an example.
Yeah, quality grade A comment right here from David Stick.
Wait, I'm gonna do some. I don't know where is Lyle. Oh, he's here. Lyle is literally making a breakfast taco.
That's our tech guy making a breakfast taco.
This is so funny. Wait, I want to highlight this comment. It's 2-0 Argentina. Yeah, who are they playing? Who are they playing?
I don't keep up with the football.
I was keeping up for a little bit.
I like how you call it football.
See, what sport is the World Cup?
These
comments
racing
are so fun. Okay. We are going to share some announcements while Lyle fixes his taco, and then we'll get going. But trust me when I say we are going to be off soon, because Matthew and I haven't had a taco, so we want to not be on very long. Okay, France is who is playing. So let us know in the comments who you're rooting for. I'm rooting for Argentina, and it had nothing to do with the fact that they're already winning. All right. So we have some announcements. The first one is that in-person service, our next one is next week, but it is on Saturday. We're going to have a Christmas Eve kind of like candlelit service beginning at 5 p.m. next Saturday at the Texas Hall. I just looked at the weather, and the high that day is like 30. So
it'll be cozy in the Texas Hall.
It'll be cozy in the Texas Hall, and also we have hot cocoa and cookies. The deacons have gotten together. So I was imagining us outside, but no, I think we will be doing that inside after the service. So bring your family. We're going to sing Christmas carols. We have a live nativity happening with the kids, and it's next Saturday.
Yeah, we still need kids to sign up for that. I'm thinking. Yeah. Respond to Naomi's request for that.
Yeah, Lyle, you're supposed to be putting the announcement banners. There we go. So funny. Okay, what's the next announcement? Matt, you can share.
Okay.
He's gonna show.
I gotta wait for the banner to pop up.
There
no Sunday gatherings next week because we're doing it Christmas Eve. So Christmas and then New Year's Day, we won't have an in-person or virtual gathering, either one.
Yep, that's true. However, we have added an in-person service date, January 8th. We are going to be meeting in person That'll be our first service of the new year, just as usual at the Texas Hall. Mm-hmm. And then on January 22nd.
10 years.
10 years, baby.
Wow. I would love to see the stat of how many church starts make it to 10 years.
I have
I
seen,
don't think it's many.
y'all, it is a very hard feat to accomplish. And I have seen over these 10 years, several friends and colleagues start churches, and those churches have already closed doors. And I'm not, that's sad. And it's hard. It's hard also to be a progressive church start. So you just don't have the same kind of like foundational financial support as other church starts have. So we're really proud, and we're going to celebrate in a very special way on January 22nd. And we're going to go through, like, we're going to have kind of this storytelling experience where we share different seasons of the church. We have people flying in who started the church with us, and we're just super, super excited. So if you come any day, plan to come on January 22nd and celebrate 10 years. I think those are all the announcements for now. In a moment, we're going to have just a quick conversation about Sundays in 2023, because our Sunday rhythm is going to distinctly shift in 2023. So we're going to talk about that here in just a moment.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's a good shift.
For now, we want to light the Advent candle because it is the fourth Sunday, and we didn't lead y'all all through the season of Advent to not light the Advent candle. But just so you know, we don't have a guide today. We're not doing communion. However, I hope you'll still put in the comments what you're snacking and sipping on, because I have coffee with eggnog in it. And we still want to hear from you and hope that this is a sacred communion moment without the typical liturgy. So we'll light the candles. We'll have the quick conversation about 2023, and then Matthew will share his sermon. And then that'll be it for the morning. But yeah, share in the comments, and maybe Lyle can throw some of those up on the screen for everyone to see. For now, I'm going to light the candles. This is assuming I can get a match out. Okay, I got one.
We didn't talk about this part. Are we sharing the litany together?
Yeah. Yes.
Like you read?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You read part, I read part. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We forgot to talk about that. Anna said, we need to do communion because I have port and a cracker. Okay, y'all, we're going to combo communion with lighting the Advent wreath. Okay.
Like,
so after our litany, we will all take our sips or bites, and you have time to go run and grab something, but you know the drill. So you probably already have it. Okay. I'm going to light first the candle of hope. And if you're a kid watching, by the way, we light the Advent candle every week, and we say what gives us hope, what gives us peace, and what gives us joy. So if you can invite your kids in the comments, you could share for them, just share what makes them feel loved, because this last candle is the candle of love. So what makes you feel loved, and how do you show love? Either one of those you can share in the comments, and we'll put some of those on the screen, but you're invited to do that now. All our candles are lit. Another Advent season in the books. Let's see. I'm going to take these out. Lyle, you can take, oh wait, I did it. Okay, there we go. I'm going to ask Lyle to put the liturgy on the screen for Advent. Matthew adapted this beautiful Advent litany from Enfleshed, and I'm going to read the regular. Matthew will respond in the bold. And if you're at home, we invite you to participate in this moment together. Beloveds, let us prepare for the advent of Christ.
Choosing hope, we remember that salvation is always near.
The world offers many opportunities to be overwhelmed by chaos.
Committing to the way of peace again, we choose none of them.
Tending to the spiritual hunger all around, we lean toward the promises of God.
Embracing joy, we welcome the miracle of God with us.
Stay alert. Remember the holy arrival comes at an unexpected hour.
The inbreaking of love is always a mysterious encounter.
Are you prepared to welcome the divine, even if they arrive late at night, road weary, humble, and on a donkey?
We will kindle the fires of hope, peace, joy, and love, and await their arrival.
Mysterious one, keep us attentive to your presence around and within. Do not let us get distracted by what numbs or overwhelms. Encourage us in all that makes us alive to you and the sacred possibilities for transformation before us.
Amen.
Oh, that was
That is
beautiful.
pretty.
Enfleshed.com. That's, I think, enfleshed.com.
You'll notice we've been using Enfleshed quite a bit this year. They're a wonderful organization, and they give us permission to even adapt their materials at times. Just say we've adapted their stuff.
Yeah, I've been grateful for that. I'm gonna move
They
this.
didn't tell them to take their communion.
Yes, take your communion elements now. I have to move that out of the way so I don't catch on fire. I have caught my hair on fire before in the bathtub, so I'm just saying it happens with the candles. Viv says socks and shoes and jammies make her feel loved. Do we have any other kids that shared? Eve said when she gets hugs from her mom. Wow, so many people in the comments this morning. Thanks, y'all. Okay, this is so funny, David. So I'm so glad so many of you are here because this is our very last online gathering in the way that we've typically done it. Do you want to say more about that?
Well, COVID came and we made some really big shifts really quickly. And we have had a strong virtual service presence since then. And in our typical peace fashion of following the energy and following kind of what you all are telling us you want and you need, it's time to make some shifts.
Yeah. So we're so excited just to be in this community where we can be so creative. One of our limitations has always been, the financial part of things, which is typical for a small, tiny church, especially where all the pastors are multivocational and there's not any full-time staff. We do really, really well despite that limitation. And one of the areas we do so well in is in collaboration and creativity, creative problem solving. So we met with our servant leadership team. Several of you watching are on that team. It's a pretty big team right now, which is exciting. But we met with our team and just talked about how we were feeling about online. And one of the reasons we've been online for so long is because we couldn't afford to meet more in person with rent and the staff increases that would also include. And so we just were able to move up to 2 times a month this year in the latter half of the year. That, as many of you know, is still going over our budgeted expenses. But we do have a pretty hefty savings from not having been meeting for basically 2 years. We were able to save a lot in rent. So we do have the savings, but ultimately we would love to not take from our reserves because they will only last for so long. So we were thinking about, okay, what can we do differently in 2023? And as a team, what we came up with was this concept of watch parties. It was something we had thought about doing during the pandemic, but it kept getting so tricky because of the realities of needing to social distance and being inside versus outside. It was just really hard. But now we feel like we're in a place where we can do this. And so our first watch party situation will happen on January 15th. That's the first online service of the year. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to have Sign Up Geniuses go out once a month. We'll do watch parties once a month. And we will, you will be able to offer to host a watch party. You will be able to say how many people. Can you have 8 people? Can you have 12? Can you have 15? You can decide how many. You can decide, we'll have it all set up where there's a formula and it'll be easy. And then people can look coming up for an online week, they can look and see like all the options. Oh, there's a watch party in Hutto. There's a watch party in Georgetown. There's a watch party in Cedar Park. Which one do I want to go to? And there will be limited spots. So watch party spots will close, and then there will be no spots for that. But then you can just find another one, or you can wait till the next month. And so people will go to a home and they'll be there in community, in person, engaging. You can bring your kids, so we'll have details around that and specifications around that. And, kids will be able to enjoy a rhythm of going into sacred community each week. Some weeks it'll be at the Texas Hall, some weeks it'll be at a watch party, but regardless, they'll experience, participating in sacred community each week. And then what we're going to do is, instead of having a full online service, we will have one of our preaching pastors, because there's about 5 of us who preach in the rotation. They will have pre-recorded a kind of homily and a kind of a moment. Think Coffee with a Pastor, but with a real sermon. And they will have pre-recorded that. And that recording will go live at 10 a.m. on Sundays. So people who are watching online will still know we're still streaming, we're still offering this sacred moment, but it'll be pre-recorded so the pastors can participate in whichever watch party they want to. So it'll just be kind of like this very short, think like 15-minute moment. And then the watch party hosts will create a space of conversation. The pastor will probably offer some prompt ideas for conversations. You can use them or not use them. We're not very prescriptive around here. Those different places will probably have breakfast. So it'll just be kind of a cool way to work with the reality that we just can't afford to do our collective gathering every week. Do you have anything you want to add?
So much. I'm excited. It's this beautiful hybrid model. I think for me that almost mimics the early church meeting in homes. I'm excited to see what like local cultures develop around watch parties in certain homes. Like, I don't know, if you're going to do a watch party at the Leshpers, there's going to be a pickup basketball game right afterward. For example, I don't know, I'm just making that up, but I'm really excited to see what cultures develop and norms develop in different homes. And if you want to listen to my sermon on 2X, then you can,
That's right. And I had, when speaking of Leshpers, I was like, oh, if Tracy and Lee host in Mueller, then okay, this is going to be like there's probably going to be a cocktail here, and then we're probably going to go walk over to Mueller afterwards and have some lunch. You know what I mean? Based on people's locations and situations, each watch party will be different, and we'll create the formula together, and we'll make things as inclusive and accessible as we can. And I really love it also because Sunday mornings, while they're the easiest rhythm for a lot of people to carve out, they're not always the easiest for establishing true bonding moments or deep conversation moments. It's usually small talk, and it doesn't get you very far by way of forming relationships sometimes.
So true. How often have I been like, hey, I wish I could talk with you, but I got to go put those chairs up.
Yeah.
It'll be different.
Yeah. So anyways, we're really excited. If you have questions about it, you can put those in the comments now. If you have any comments you just want to share processing the ending of this particular season of us being live several times a month and staring right at the screen live with a group, feel free to share. Oh my gosh, look at this. With a ginger ale option, she says. Yeah. I love this.
Can I ask, we didn't even talk about this in advance, but I know we have people from out of state, dialed in this morning, some of which, by the way, contributed to our gift program for a local family that needed some extra support, this Christmas season. So how are we going to keep them involved in the life of the community?
Yeah. So we're talking about all these things. We're still creating what the actual recording will have in it. So there was a good question about will there still be kid sermons. So We haven't, we would love your feedback here. Our thought initially was that we would have some sort of kid packet available physically at each watch party so the kids that are in attendance can actually engage in something in person instead of the screen. If you are someone who you feel like your kids actually watch the recordings, we would love that feedback, because in that case, we would consider including a message in the recording as well. Again, we haven't formulated it, and we're not, once we do, even then we'll still make changes as needed. But our thought is, let's have a moment where all of us across states and across cities, even in our area, know that we're all watching the same kind of like message at the same time. But then ultimately it's very short so that the focus can be on those in-person moments at the watch party.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this made sense.
Yeah, it does. And I saw, like Sarah's question, how does that work for us online only? I like Jenna's brainstorming here. Wouldn't it be cool if our out-of-towners started their own watch parties? And maybe one of the homes says, we'll pull up, we'll set up a Zoom link or something for people if they want to dial in.
Yes.
I don't know. I'm brainstorming here.
Yeah.
We're going to have to overcome these hurdles as we evolve and grow.
Yeah. So we will have that online moment for people online. You'll still see us. You'll still get a sermon. The comments will still be open. We'll still, especially those of us on staff and leadership, will still moderate the comments and respond. But yeah, I think we will probably have opportunities for people to Zoom in. I know Tammy Zooms in on our writing, We Who Write meetup often. So you can still just request to Zoom in on a watch party. And I think this is just kind of us brainstorming what our local community has needed, and hoping that we can still reach those who are online only. Yeah. Naomi says she feels like the kids will remember gathering together in person in the fellowship more than watching online. Yeah, sometimes the kids can't make it in person, but ultimately what we're trying to do is create in-person moments, because that's the feedback we've gotten on surveys and like just feedback from people for a year, that people are so missing that. And I know for me personally, my daughter watches the kids sermon and that's it, but there's nothing like her understanding that rhythm of going and being in community. But we still want to be accessible and make sure we're providing what everyone needs. So yeah, feel free to share in these comments. We will go through and read them. And you can always email us. It's Aurelia@peacewillco.com, Matthew@peacewillco.com. You can email us any of your thoughts. We want to hear them as we're formulating. And we'll still stream. Yes. So David said, are we still streaming in person? So we're still streaming every week. It's just the online only weeks are changing. So just to give you a glimpse of what this is going to look like, the first Sunday will be the same. We will have Feed Your Soul Sundays, no church. Then we'll have 2 Sundays a month in person. They're already scheduled out through the whole rest of the year. We've already paid.
We haven't paid,
but we've reserved it. We reserved the dates and we have them for twice a month. And then once a month, we will have a watch party Sunday. Now, there are a few things to say with that. One, in the summers, we will only meet in person once a month, because summers are so slow for us. We're already a small community, and it's just really hard for us to sustain big Sunday gatherings in the summer. So we will only meet in person once, and we will kind of figure out, as this watch party rhythm gets going, how we want to do summers as we get a little bit closer. But the rest of the year, we'll meet in person twice. And then that leaves 5th Sundays. Do you want to share about 5th Sundays? Yeah,
5th Sundays might be a little bit fluid, but one of our ideas is that's our opportunity to connect with our community partners, who we've really spent the past 6 months starting to really develop these good community partnerships, and we're going to continue in 2023. That's one of the big areas of focus that I'll have, is helping us build those strong relationships. So that would be a wonderful opportunity to connect with them either that Sunday or that week to serve alongside them.
Yeah. So
that's part of it.
Yeah.
There's more to talk about.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, we would love to add Fifth Sundays as an in-person meeting. What we will have to accomplish is some intentional fundraising this year to do that. So we're in the process of figuring out how much it costs for us to meet per Sunday. That includes our rent, our childcare, and the pastoral hour load, because some of our pastors are paid for the month, and that kind of it depends on the in-person Sundays too. So we have to look at all of that and figure out what the cost would be. And then we'll probably do some intentional fundraising so that by the end, hopefully by the second half of the year, we can add Fifth Sundays in person. So that's the plan. Yeah. That was probably long enough of a conversation.
Can I just add thanks, y'all, for the flexibility, and I see all the good energy in the comments about this. You all are just rock stars at being flexible and rolling with it and saying, yay, this is going to be awesome. Let's make it great.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Well, let's move into a sermon space. I'm going to get out of the way.
Get out of here. Take your coffee. Go. I have to switch screens, which means I won't get to see your comments, and I'm sad. So, but you all keep having fun in the comments section there. Let me read our scripture this morning. It is Matthew 1, 18 through 24. It's the lectionary reading, the gospel reading for this morning. And the gospel writer wrote, "Now the birth of Jesus, the Messiah, took place this way. When his mother Mary had been engaged to Joseph, but before they lived together, she was found to be with child from the Holy Spirit. Her husband Joseph, being a righteous man and unwilling to expose her to public disgrace, planned to dismiss her quietly. But just when he had resolved to do this, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream and said, 'Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary as your wife, for the child conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. She will bear you a son, and you are to name him Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins.' All this took place to fulfill what had been spoken by the Lord through the prophet. 'Look, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and they shall name him Emmanuel,' which means God is with us. When Joseph awoke from sleep, he did as the angel of the Lord commanded him. He took her as his wife." We hear the voice of God in the reading of these sacred words. Thanks be to God. If you're like me, you might have some mixed feelings about that whole story. We're going to talk a little bit about that this morning. We're in the midst of a sermon series for Advent called Macro Forces and Micro Responses. And let me share a little bit about the macro force I see in our society of sacrifice zones. Maybe that doesn't make sense, but stick with me. In 1928, the city of Austin, this area that we live, they released their master plan for development. You can Google it. It's 1928 City of Austin master plan. And in that master plan, they required that all the Black communities in Austin, well over a dozen of them, relocate to East Austin, east of I-35. You'll recognize some of the names of these communities. 60 years post-Civil War, these communities included the communities at Pleasant Hill, Clarksville, Kinchianville, Wheatville, Barton Springs, Raina Branch, Masontown, Robertson Hill, Bell Hill, Burditt's Prairie, Red River Street, West Side, Gregorytown, Brackenridge, and Horst's Pasture. I wanted to say all those names. They need to be remembered. These were communities built on former plantations or around business interest or family ties, or simply because it was just too dangerous to live away from the small urban area that Austin was becoming. In 1928, the city decided that they wanted all these different communities uprooted and consolidated in one place in East Austin. They wanted their land, and they wanted them out of the way of progress. To coerce them to move, the city said they would only be providing public services and infrastructure like schools and parks for Black residents in that part of town. There were even threats of cutting off utilities unless you moved. Some held out, but eventually the communities established by these formerly enslaved people largely disintegrated, and they came together in East Austin. The investor and business mind inside of me right now wonders how much would that real estate be worth today if they'd been allowed to stay there. A quick search on realtor.com reveals that the current median sales price in the Clarksville neighborhood is around $2.4 million. On the other hand, East Austin properties are currently selling for around $600,000, a difference of about 400%. So I'm so tempted to flip over to the comments and just see what you all are saying about this. Why East Austin? Simply, East Austin is what we would call a designated sacrifice zone. That's the macro concept for me to talk about a few minutes this morning, sacrifice zones. By that time, East Austin had already been designated a place for all of the dirty industries for the Austin area. That's where the sewage facilities were. That's where the factories were, et cetera. In 1930, 2 years later, the Mueller Airport would open there. And who would want to live by an airport? I suppose those who are forced to. A couple years later, in 1948, 6 major petrochemical corporations constructed a 52-acre facility right there in the heart of East Austin, where noxious and dangerous chemicals were stored in these massive, massive tanks. They were stored there, they were vented there, they leaked from there, they leached from there into the air and the soil and the water for the next 40 years until the East Austin community finally organized and protested enough to get the attention of the state to go look what they're doing in our neighborhoods. And finally, the Texas environmental agencies came to take a look. It took 40 years of all of this to happen. And when they did, they found that the soil and the underground water had been contaminated so bad, such that 61% of all the water wells they tested in East Austin were contaminated with carcinogens and chemicals. The water quality sampling that they took showed concentrations of cancer-causing chemicals 720 times higher than the federally acceptable level. East Austin is what we'd call a sacrifice zone for the rest of Austin and for Central Texas in general. Will it ever recover? I don't know. I met a guy a couple of months ago while I was touring the Austin Food Forest, which it's just a fun place to visit, but he lives in East Austin. He said he can't grow his own food because he's had his soil tested and it's still full of dangerous heavy metals because of the nature of East Austin and what happened there. And so he grows mushrooms all over his land because mushrooms will soak up the heavy metals and then he can throw them in the dumpster and they get sent to the landfill. And he hopes that maybe one day enough of the chemicals and heavy metals will be removed and he can grow his own food, a basic human right. Now, I share all this for a couple of reasons, all right? First, it's just good for us to know the history of our place, right? How did East Austin become East Austin? Now you know one of the biggest pieces of that. It began in the 1928 City of Austin Master Plan. So next time you're having an overpriced cocktail in downtown East Austin, think about the history of the place and why you're sitting in a hip post-industrial setting. Oh, that's why this is here. Second, I just want us to have an awareness of the concept of sacrifice zones as we navigate our lives and our choices. I want us to be able to ask the question of ourselves, what does the Christian practice of love look like in a world that creates sacrifice zones? We're in the season of Advent. This is technically a penitential season. It's a season of reflection and acknowledgement of where and how we might cause harm and what repentance and change and growth might look like from that new awareness. Our gospel reading this morning, I read it a minute ago. It's a story, among other things, about Joseph's ethical dilemma. Will Joseph choose the socio-cultural expectation placed on him to dissociate with an impure woman, Mary, condemning her to public shame, to ostracize her, to condemn her to a short, hard life of subsistence living, most likely via the profession of prostitution? Will he choose that? Or will he protect her from that? I think of Mary as existing in a sacrifice zone space. Will Joseph sacrifice her for the sake of his reputation and his standing in the community? Or will he be aware of the cost of his choices that she will have to bear? Mary, in my mind, is not unlike the character Fantine in that famous French classic Les Mis. Fantine, a young girl, naive and innocent, falls into a love affair with a rich young man who ultimately leaves her alone and pregnant. Like Mary, she's an unwed expecting mother. Side note, I once was preaching in an Air Force chapel service at Christmas time, and from the pulpit, I called Mary an unwed teen mother, and I paused, like you're supposed to do after you've said something important, to see if it would sink in and what in the reaction, and it was dead silent for several seconds, awkwardly silent. Everyone was clearly unsure of what to make about what I just said, until one woman in the second row yelled out, "Yes!" and it echoed through the chapel. And I thought, okay, that was gospel. That was good news to that one woman right there. Everyone else is unsure what to do with this. I'm going to let them sit with that. Anyway, Fantine. Her unwed pregnancy causes her downfall, and she's fired from her job, and she's forced to be a prostitute to support herself and her daughter. And in my mind, Fantine will forever be the Mary that might have been character. This is how Mary's story might have gone. And in a way, she's a stand-in for all women who exist in the sacrifice zone of our society, where we are obsessed with purity and controlling women's bodies. In our text, Mary is kept out of the sacrifice zone, but it took an act of God. It took an angel to intervene to get Joseph to marry her. I do judge Joseph a little bit for this. I have mixed feelings about this text. I judge him a little, but I judge the society more, and I judge us more because we have these macro forces in our societies which we identify classes of people to sacrifice and to scapegoat as if they were the problem, and they need to be the bearers of the problem. Again, our theme this fourth week of Advent is love. Love. What is love? Love is that orientation toward another where you want their best, not their happiness or success, not to exploit or coerce them, not for you to feel something from them or their actions, but for them to flourish. That's what love is. Love is that orientation toward another where you support their flourishing. This is the Christian concept of love. And I wish every time the word love was written in our Bible, it had an asterisk by it. Because we so often think of love as something sentimental or a feeling, and we don't think of it in terms of another person's flourishing. What does this flourishing kind of love look like amidst the macro force of sacrifice zones in our world? Let me just give a few examples and then a few responses, and I'll wrap up here. The typical American consumer, us, benefits tremendously from the sacrifice zones here in the United States and around the world. Here's a few examples. You already know that Americans consume more than any other nation in the world. Although we are 4% of the world's population, we consume 15 to 30% of its natural resources, more than any other nation. It's said that if the rest of the world were to consume like Americans, we would need 4.2 Earths just to sustain that consumption level. In a way, the rest of the world is a sacrifice zone for our consumption habits. This produces an enormous amount of trash. In 1980, the average American disposed of 60 pounds of plastic per year. By 2018, it had become 218 pounds, from 60 to 218 pounds of plastic per American each year. Some of that plastic is recycled. I know it makes us feel so good to put that in the recycling bin. But now, journalist after journalist, story after story is saying, most of that really isn't recycled. All that's getting recycled is about 5%. Most of it ends up in the world's poorest countries like Bangladesh, Laos, Ethiopia, Senegal, because labor there is inexpensive and the environmental regulations are very lax. And so a lot of our recycled plastic ends up burned, buried, or piled up in those countries. City on a hill and light of the world, we hardly are. To places like this, places like these sacrifice zones where all of our trash goes. Domestically, these plastics are produced in places like what's called Cancer Alley in Louisiana. It's a stretch of the Mississippi River between New Orleans and Baton Rouge that got the nickname because of the concentration of petrochemical companies right there in that stretch. And one community there in Cancer Alley has a risk of cancer 50 times the national average, the highest in the country. You see an unseen cost of my driving, my home's high energy needs, my consumption choices and habits is borne by my neighbors in Louisiana. They are a sacrifice zone for my habits. But it's not just oil and gas and plastics. I think of Trump, who was elected in some ways because, don't get out the pitchforks right now. Don't be mad at me. He was elected in some ways because he gave voice to some of the folks in some of the sacrifice zones of our society. Think of the manufacturing that used to be in places like Camden, New Jersey, but it's no longer there. It's been completely outsourced overseas, where we have exported all of our opportunities for hands-on work to places like that. You go to Camden, New Jersey now, you'll find endless streets of empty brick factories, windowless and employeeless. And a lot of the stuff that we fill our homes with now is affordable only because it's being made by people elsewhere who do it for pennies on the dollar while their local environment is polluted. Now, I'm not trying to make us all feel bad this morning. You may be feeling some guilt. That's not my goal. It's just that if we're going to be a people of love, we have to think about who exists in the sacrifice zones that bear the cost of our choices. Let me just give a few more examples, then I'm going to wrap up. I think of the mining communities in our country and around the world. And I think of this huge push to electrify our society with solar panels and wind turbines and electric vehicles. But what we don't see are the sacrifice zones where for example, one electric vehicle battery, it's 1,000 pounds typically, 1,000-pound electric vehicle battery requires the removal and processing of 500,000 pounds of earth to create that 1,000-pound electric battery. It has to be dug up, it has to be transported, it has to be refined, all the different minerals in there has to be somehow put together. So to get a 1,000-pound battery, you have to remove 500,000 pounds of minerals from the ground. You have to do mountaintop removal. You have to completely destroy these communities where these people are doing the mining. Again, to mention Trump, and I might get fired for this morning, but he was elected from sacrifice zones like this, where entire communities are disrupted and streams polluted just to make us feel better about our consumerism, just to greenwash our consumption patterns. Again, my intent is not to overwhelm us, but instead that we might make awake, aware, and mindful micro-level choices in light of these macro-level forces that we couldn't stop. We can't change even if we wanted to, but we can still make small choices at our own level. Here's 3 small ideas. First, What if rather than greenwashing our consumption patterns, what if we simply consumed less? What if we practiced the Christian disciplines of simplicity and contentment? I know that's as bad to consider and say as Joseph marrying a young woman pregnant with someone else's baby. I know these things shouldn't be said or done, right? In America, where private consumption is 70% of our domestic economy. So I'm literally advocating for a recession here. If our economy is 70% our spending, and I'm saying, stop. We are killing our world. We're sacrificing very real communities to keep living like we're living. I get it. There are consequences for that. I think of the saying, it's attributed to Gandhi, but supposedly it came from St. Elizabeth Ann Seton first. She said, live simply so that others may simply live. It's a beautiful saying. I think of it daily. So that's number one. What if we just consume less? Number two, can you consume more locally? For example, one way we've tried to do this year is the little bit of beef that my family eats, we buy in bulk from K&C Cattle Company, a local rancher who uses sustainable and eco-friendly agriculture and ranching practices. The 20-pound box of pasture-raised, rotationally grazed ground beef that we buy, it actually costs less than if we were to go buy the same thing from H-E-B, but that's not the point. The point is, I know that their operation isn't cramming cattle into an industrial feedlot, many of which I'm familiar with, having gone to school in the Great Plains, north of Lubbock, where it is nasty, and I know that neighbors near them are being harmed with dust and odors and mountains of manure. But I know that this local rancher, whom I'm developing a relationship with, I know that they aren't monoculturing and overgrazing their land. I know that they aren't harming their neighbors. Look, I still get way too many of my goods on Amazon, but this is a start for me right here. I'm trying to live locally. So first, consume less. Second, consume locally. And third, consume together. Consume together. Talk about your intentional, mindful consumption with each other. Collaborate with friends and family and have values-led conversations. An example that we tried this year was, rather than buying Christmas gifts for our nephews, we took them bowling. We said, let's do something relational. We didn't say this, but I could say, what act of love might we do that contributes to their flourishing? Bowling together probably does that better than buying them something plastic from Walmart. Also, I'm trying to make or regift items for friends that I'm giving gifts to this year. Notice I said I'm trying. I'm trying. Forget perfection, forget solving, forget fixing. Even the title of this whole sermon series points to what we're trying to say. There's an admission here that there are macro level forces that we can't change, but we can still make micro level decisions that align with our faith and our practices of peace, hope, joy, and love. It's a journey I'm on. It's a journey we're all on together. And I'm grateful to be in a community where we can talk about these really challenging things together. And we can be critical toward ourselves about that, with the goal of being more faithful, with the goal of figuring out how can we contribute to the flourishing of our neighbors and our world together. May God continue to give us courage, creativity, and grace as we do so. Amen. So, my partner Aurelia is not here to offer a benediction. I see a lot of comments. I'm going to go back and read those when I get a minute. Oh, Aurelia is in the other room commenting. Okay. Let me just conclude our time together. I send you all with my blessing. Go in peace, for peace. Amen.